Welcome to take number 5 million. Alright, well, maybe not that many, but it's been like at least 10. I'm going to try to get through it without being interrupted by a child screaming, laughing, trying to stick their head in the frame. Yeah, stuff. We'll see. I haven't made it yet, but it's only 5:30. The reason why I made this video is because I want to talk to people about the debt ceiling and really focus on the effects that it may have on people with EBT and offer some tips for stretching your EBT just in case. All right. The debt ceiling in a nutshell is the government has a limit on how much money they can borrow to service their debts. So that's just paying the interest. Now, do I agree with it as a way to run a country? Well, I'm certainly not going to take out a loan to just pay interest only on my own loans. So it makes no sense the government does that, okay? It's stupid. But it's what they do or have been doing for quite some time now. So it is what it is, and I can't control it, and neither can you. But at any rate, a certain faction in legislature has put through a bill that says that they're not going to raise the debt ceiling until they've made spending cuts. Which is logical, right? I mean, if you find yourself sinking monetarily, you make cuts to your budget. However, the president has said he's not going to make cuts in spending, and he may even invoke the 14th Amendment to raise the debt ceiling. Now, that's highly unlikely, and it's, as far as I understand it, not constitutional, but I'm not a constitutional attorney, so that would be duked out in the Supreme Court. At any rate, how does this affect you? Well, if you're on EBT and they don't raise the debt ceiling, the federal government comes to a grinding halt. EBT payments could be delayed to the states who dole them out. So, you need to be prepared just in case, and you need to stretch this month's EBT as far as you can. Now, I don't know how much you have left. I don't know what time of the month you get your benefits, but just bear with me, okay? I'm going to give you some tips here. So you want to first look for cheap meats. Hot dogs are cheap meats. Tuna fish, cheap meat. Any kind of cheap protein like that. Are they always the healthiest? No, but they'll put food in your belly. Depression cooking with Clara has a great recipe that calls for hot dogs called Poor Man's Meal. Highly recommend. Give that a try. And the sales for meats tend to be on chicken and pork. However, ground beef, while more expensive, you can stretch it. You can add oatmeal to it when you make meatloaf. You can skip meatloaf altogether because it's really not that frugal of a meal. It's like what I would consider mid-range. And you can add lentils or beans to it when you're stretching it in a casserole. So the $4.99 a pound, which is a good sale now. Why is $4.99 a good sale on hamburger? I don't know, but it is now. So, but you can stretch that. Or maybe you could figure out markdown day. I figured out that our local grocery store marks down on Thursday mornings. So I go before noon and try to pick up as many discount meats as I can. So this week I got a whole bunch of different packages of sausage for $2.93 a pound. I picked up pork chops for $1.97 a pound. Used to be that was like a regular sales price. Now, not so much. You don't see it for that cheap anymore as often. So I picked some of those up, and I did splurge on a couple of pounds of steak for $4 a pound. So that's a little on the pricey side, but I thought, it would be a nice little treat for a Sunday meal. So you want to look for carbs, cheap carbs. Actually, all your carbs are pretty cheap, but some are going to go further than others. Pasta is inexpensive. Rice is still inexpensive. It's not going to be for much longer, though, but that's a whole nother topic. Potatoes, while they've gotten more expensive, they're still a good starch to have. And potatoes have vitamin C. They're very, very healthy for you. So if you can eat potatoes, I can't. But if you can, please have a lot of potato-based meals. Quinoa is a grain, but it has a complete protein in it. So you can have that and some vegetables and you're good to go as far as protein goes. It's more expensive, but if it's replacing a meat, it's still pretty a good deal. Basic baking items. You want flour, sugar, baking powder. You can use them to make almost anything. Bread, like a quick bread for baking powder. If you have some yeast, you can learn to make some yeast bread. Beans. Beans are a good protein source, especially when combined with a grain. And they found that you don't have to combine the beans with a grain at the same meal. They used to think you would have to combine them together, but you don't. So long as it's within a 24-hour period, I believe, it still makes a complete protein. You can also use the beans to stretch meat. So you can put lentils in your spaghetti. When you make spaghetti sauce with ground beef, just add some already cooked lentils. Or you can use that for taco meat. Nobody notices. Well, if they do, I mean, it's hard to tell. My kids don't care. You can also sprout lentils. So they'll make bean sprouts. You can put them on sandwiches. You can put them with salads. If you use a bigger bean, like a navy bean or something like that, they'll make, or mung beans or whatever kind of large bean, they'll make a bigger sprout, which you could make as a base for a salad. My recommendation for vegetables and fruits, fresh kind, is to have a plan. If you find that you frequently can't get all of your produce eaten before it molders in your fridge and becomes a science experiment, you need to just acknowledge the fact you don't eat fresh produce that fast and invest in either cans of vegetables and fruits or frozen. The frozen's probably more healthy than the produce you get at the grocery store because it's been flash frozen and all of its nutrients are still intact. As they age, they degrade. But if you're going to get fresh vegetables, look at what makes the most sense monetarily. So carrots are inexpensive. Cabbage is inexpensive. So those are the kinds of things you want to look for. Do not get things like peppers or tomatoes right now. They're expensive. You're not going to get your money worth. Now, eventually, that'll change come summer, and you'll be able to get them more inexpensively. But right now, no, not so much. As far as breakfasts go, do yourself a favor and forget about breakfast cereals. Because while it says you have, say, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 servings in a box of cereal, who the heck eats a half a cup to a third of a cup of cereal at a time? Nobody. That's who. They just don't go very far. You'd be better off buying like oatmeal. You can make granola with it. You can make oatmeal breakfast bars. You can make baked oatmeal. You can make regular oatmeal. Like oatmeal, you can put it in muffins, and it'll make the muffins have more fiber in them, so they'll last longer. You can also, grits are also a better choice. You can use grits for, you can even make sides at dinner time, cheese and grits. And that's a complete food meal right there, if you ask me. And then my last tip is to look up frugal recipes. I like the More with Less cookbook by Doris Longacre Jansen, or Jansen Longacre, either way. You can borrow that from your library. I highly recommend having it. I have 2 copies, and every time I see it in the thrift store, I get another one because I have a tendency to spill stuff on them. Dining on a Dime is an excellent cookbook. It was first released as Not Just Beans. There are a lot of good recipes in there. And then the Hillbilly Housewife website has a lot of really good, inexpensive recipes. Now, I like to go to the Wayback Machine on the internet and to go to the Hillbilly Housewife that way because I liked the older style of the website. But you can still find good recipes on the blog style. And if you need to, borrow the books from the library. Like, borrow different cookbooks, look for inexpensive Depression-era recipes, and find recipes that your family will eat, that you enjoy, that aren't that expensive. So in a nutshell, you really should be, if you're, actually all the time, but especially if you're on SNAP, or you're on, and you get funds from the government, if you get aid, you need to be aware that it could stop as early as June the 1st, and just make plans for that. If this kind of thing is of interest to you, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Remember, do what you can with what you got.